In Canadian federal politics, the Canucks are represented by two separate yet unequal groups: the globalists who sold out and the opposition trying to salvage a country. These are their stories.
The tragedy of Bob Gainey seems written in stone, a Hall of Fame player who became one of hockey's most controversial general managers. His time running the Montreal Canadiens was marked by the Scott Gomez trade, widely considered one of the worst deals in NHL history, a catastrophic swap that sent future star Ryan McDonough to New York.
To have Canadiens legend, former general manager, former coach, former player, former Calder Trophy winner, he won it all.
6 minutes with Ms. Goodrich.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary, for being here today. It is your first time coming to this committee, and we did invite you for 2 hours, so will you be here for the full 2 hours?
I believe I'm here for an hour.
Well, we did invite you for 2 hours. It's unfortunate that you were only here for an hour. So you talked quite extensively about the school food program. Are you the lead on the school food program?
I am.
So do you attend cabinet meetings?
I do.
And so are you happy with the fact that your school food program only aims to serve 1 in 10 kids in Canada?
I believe the school food program has made tremendous advancement in feeding more children, 400,000 additional with the investments that have been made. This is in addition to what the work and the investments that provinces and territories were doing. And so I believe that it is a big step forward and a meaningful impact on families in need.
So do you know how many school-aged children are in Canada?
How many school-age? I do not have that exact number in front of me.
5 million. So you're aiming to feed 400,000. That means that that's only 1 in 10 kids that will even possibly get fed by that program. What happens to the other 9?
It is 400,000 in addition to what the provinces and territories were already contributing through their own investments and programs. So, for example, in Quebec, there were over 700,000 children that were receiving meals, and now that number has grown thanks to the investment. So I think, is there always room to do more? Absolutely. We're going to make the program permanent, and we're going to continue to invest in it and expand it to meet the needs of as many children as we can.
Do you know how many children go to food banks every single month in Canada? Do you know how many children go to food banks every single month in Canada?
I don't have an exact number, no.
Would you like to know? It's over 700,000 children in food bank lines every single month in this country. Does that number alarm you?
I think it's important to note that the programs and supports that this government is investing in the budget, for example, the Canada Child Benefit, as I mentioned, school food, dental care, child care, these are all ways that organizations that provide support and fight food insecurity have said will support and fight food insecurity. So our government is investing in those things to support families who face food insecurity. As far as I can tell, members opposite have voted against all of these supports that the industry and that those, not the industry, that those working on the ground in these sectors have said will help address the problem.
So, Minister, do you believe that government is best suited to feed children and not parents?
I believe it takes a village to raise healthy children.
So, but my question, do you know how the percentage of the clients at food banks that are children?
I don't know that number, no.
It's 33%. A third of the people that use food banks in this country are kids. This is an abject failure from the government for the last 10 years that have been driving up food prices. Food prices continue rising every single month. Every single month. Families are struggling to put healthy food on the table, and your guys' solution is to feed 1 out of 10 kids in school. So what happens for the kids that are under school age?
The Canada Child Benefit, for example, for a family of 2 right now is $11,000 tax-free. In addition, if we add dental care, represents thousands of dollars back in the pockets of families. For the parents who do have children who are school age and receiving the benefit of the National School Program, perhaps in their school, that's another $800 in the pockets of Canadians. We also put forward a tax cut for 22 million Canadians. That was the first thing this government did. So we are there with supports. We are also cutting spending to invest more in these programs and protect and defend and protect these programs. These are all supports that will help with affordability, will help parents with the cost of raising their kids. And these are all things that Conservatives have consistently voted against, including last night in the House of Commons.
But do you understand that it now costs over $6 to buy a 4-liter of milk in my community? And I'm not even that far north. The further north you go, there are families that are paying substantially more just for milk to be able to feed their kids. Baby formula has gone up in 8 years. In 8 short years, the price of baby formula has increased by 84% in this country. There are families that are resorting to buying opened cases of milk just so they can feed their babies. That is absolutely insane. But this is what's happening because people can't afford formula. Minister, do you know, or Secretary, do you know what the most stolen food product is in Canada?
I do not.
Baby formula. That is an indictment on the quality of your government being able to allow people the dignity of buying food. That is absolutely unacceptable. I guess we're probably not going to agree on whether government or families should be feeding their families. I know clearly I think that it's families that should be feeding their families and not having to rely on government. But my question to you is, do you believe as legislators, perhaps we can find some common ground here, do you believe as legislators we should be doing what we can to protect the most vulnerable in our society, our children?
I do, and that's why I support the Canada Child Benefit and why I've supported this budget and previous budgets which support and protect that investment. It is a $28 billion investment into families across this country. It reaches over 6 million children.
So, Minister, are you committed to helping the most vulnerable in our society, our children?
I think everyone in this room is committed to helping the most vulnerable in our society.
I'm glad we could find some common ground.
Goodrich. We'll now go to Madame DeRoche. Madame DeRoche. Ms. Church.
Sorry, just a point of order, Chair.
What is the point of order?
Chair, while my colleague was speaking about people watering down baby formula and about baby formula being opened, the Parliamentary Secretary, Ms. DeRoche, said that she was lying. Mm-hmm. She's not lying, and it was an interruption. So I wonder if you can call Ms. DeRoche to order, and if she has objections to what my colleague.
I'll call you to order. Thank you, Ms. Church.
Chair, for what? She called her a lie and it was a heckle. Can we have some decorum, Chair? It is a matter of order. It's a matter of decorum. And I'm asking you to call on the member, the Parliamentary Secretary, to address this.
Thank you, Mr. Jennis. Ms. Church. Ms. Church, 6 minutes.
I think Mr. Roche is up. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Roche, for 6 minutes.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I thank the Secretary of State for being with us today. Thank you, Ms. Gainey. And I would also like to thank you for the excellent work that you have been doing since the beginning of your mandate to ensure that we can keep. I know that we had some difficult decisions to make with the budget that was introduced on the 4th of November and that was voted on yesterday in the House of Commons. There was a good deal of concern in communities as to whether we would maintain the programs which indeed help the most vulnerable. I know that you worked very hard to ensure that all of these programs were kept. Thank you for that. And people in my county as well, in my riding, thank you for that. You know, I think that what's very clear is that no one wants to request charity. No one wants to be in a situation such that they need to call on the government to help them take care of their children. But there are times in life, very unfortunately, where, and you know, in such situations, it's very good to be able to count on the type of programming that our government has set in and that is now continuing. In the last few weeks, much has been said about youth employment and the unemployment rate among youth. You have mentioned the new investments in the Canada Summer Jobs Program, and you have also provided us with data. Could you now tell us a bit more about the work-integrated learning? Because in our committee, we talk about specialized jobs, specialized skilled workers, given that we want to build so much in Canada. Could you tell us a bit more about the success of the work integration program? Thank you for the question. I'll be pleased to do so. We can certainly speak more about the work integration program for students, which puts students in touch with employers in a number of sectors, especially sectors where labor is needed. I was unable to finish my remarks, so I'm very sorry that I misunderstood the number of minutes allotted for my opening statement, but we have invested so that 45,000 more post-secondary students will have access to work integration programming. There's a good deal of success for the practical activities. Ensure that about 56% of students who have used them have been permanently employed full-time immediately after they finish their schooling. And 14% more were hired on contract. So that's a good example of a program that is delivered by ESTC to assist youth, to help them succeed, and 43,000 employers are integrated into this program, which is being used across all regions of Canada. Many schools and many companies are involved, and it's much appreciated both by employers and by youth. Thank you very much. Let me go back to something that you mentioned in your opening statement. How organizations that we work closely with see the programming that you've been speaking of. Could you tell us a bit more about how this programming is received by organizations on the front line who see issues on a day-to-day basis, and how you consulted them as well before you drew up the programming? Thank you for the question. Here I can tell you a bit more about, let's say, the Canada Summer Jobs Program. All our MPs have the opportunity to see to it that youth take advantage of that program. 200 jobs per riding, more or less, across the entire country. And certainly in my riding and ridings of our colleagues, there are a number of businesses, summer camps, which are very happy to be able to hire students during the summer. It's a very popular program. And that's also due to the fact there's a good deal of need for it and a demand for it. And our small and medium-sized businesses do appreciate the Summer Jobs Program, and we are increasing the number of students by 30%, so there will be even more opportunities for students to work during this summer, next summer, across the country. Thank you very much. I have 1 minute left. Yeah, not a second, but a minute. That's good. Let's go back to the school food program. In my riding in Three Rivers, about 20 schools are in low-income areas. And let me get back to what was said to the effect that the program sees to feeding only 1 out of 10 children across the country. I think that's somewhat disingenuous as a way of presenting the data, because in our riding, really the focus is on schools in less rich areas. And perhaps you could tell us a bit more about what partners you work with to ensure that the right people receive the funding. Yes, there are a number of partners, both the provinces and the Chef's Table, the various organized provincial organizations that were already working with volunteers in the schools to deliver food where there was a great deal of need. And now with this federal investment, they're able to provide even more food and cover more schools. In Quebec, I think that we've got about 2,200 schools that are taking advantage of the school food program. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Blanchet-Jonca, you have 6 minutes. Thank you very much, Chair. Good day, Ms. Secretary of State Labour. It's very good to have you with us to be able to put questions to. Your team wrote to me on the 7th of November to discuss my response to the budget. The budget had already been drawn up. It was introduced on the 4th of November, and all decisions had been made. So I was not really consulted. Could you please tell us how you carry out collaboration when you get in touch with elected officials and MPs for their opinion when it's too late? Yes, I think that Quebec's voice certainly counts in the government. We have 44 MPs representing the wonderful province of Quebec, la belle province, and I'm very proud to be one of them. I met your colleague, Marilyn Gill, and we also had a meeting with Ms. Vian. I was there on Zoom, but she was unable to join the meeting, unfortunately. I'm so sorry that we have been unable to speak up until today, but I'm very happy to answer your questions today. So, Madam Secretary of State, even if the MPs haven't been consulted in time, I ask you, are youth organizations consulted before the government makes all its decisions, as in the budget? I'm sorry, could you repeat the last part of the question? I didn't understand it. So I wasn't consulted, and I'm an MP. I was consulted after the budget came down. So I ask you, did you really consult the youth and organizations that represent them in Quebec? I had a number of meetings with, and I will look for the right word in French. Wait, I've gone to my next question. Yes. How many organizations, youth organizations in Quebec, were consulted before the budget came down? Many. And organizations that represent a number of organizations within them, like the Carrefour Jeunesse with Rudy Humbert. And there are a number of organizations that are under that umbrella across the provinces. All right, I'll allow you to look for the answer. You seem to be looking for it. Yes, the interested parties. I found that. I was just looking for the French term for interested parties. And yes, as I said, we met many of them in Quebec. Can you tell us how many Quebec youth groups were met before the budget came down? I can't immediately, but I'll be very happy to provide you with that figure after the meeting. Very good, then. So let's continue about youth. Madam Secretary of State, the federal government has undertaken to fund 50% of the healthcare service, and now it's only covering 22%, and you're reducing transfers for health, and services are costing more, especially for youth. So how can you say you're supporting youth when you're actually reducing the essential services that protect youth? Thank you for the question. I'm here to discuss my mandate, which is not health and transfers. I think that is a question to put to the correct minister. So I understand it's difficult to answer that, isn't it? Okay, so still about youth. Percentage of youth without works is up to 14.7%. Highest since the pandemic, but you have no budgeting solutions for that. Your solutions all start supposedly in 2027. That's strong Canada. Canada strong. Nothing for youth now. I've just explained that we have invested considerably to maintain current programs, and this will be upheld in years to come, such as the summer job programs, the work integration program. I would also like to point out that the poverty rates are lower since 2015. I'm talking about unemployment, not poverty. So let's be clear what we're comparing. I mean, I asked you about the 14.7 unemployment rate of youth, which is the worst that we've seen since COVID, and now you're telling us that you've got no measures coming in right now. It's not until 2026. It's not for tomorrow or next week. So, this is a crisis, and you're saying there's a fire, but we're not going to put it out until 2026. Interesting to note that we had the labor market report from October, and I think 21,000 young people have joined the labor force in that final month, and the employment rate is highest than it has been since February for youth between 15 and 24 years of age. I know there are a number of barriers. It's a period of uncertainty around the world, really, in the economy, but I think things are going in the right direction, and the budget is also heading in the right direction. Okay, good, right direction. So youth are asking for loans, interest-free for their education. And you have bringing in a GST, which is not even reducing the price of housing and helps only how we have 85% of young people who are hoping to buy houses and can't. So why are we refusing to provide real help for property access for young families? The budget is investing greatly in Build Canada Homes, in building affordable housing so that youth will be able to purchase housing at lesser prices. I'm here to discuss my mandate, which is not Build Canada Homes, but I certainly agree with you that this is something that we will continue to work on in our government. Look, it's important for the Minister of State Labour to take an interest in housing. Okay. So we have a very high budget coming in. How can you tell us that this is investing in youth when it is youth themselves who will be paying off this debt for the decades to come? I think that the government, with its budget, has set out to build a stronger economy. We are creating now the strongest economy among G7 countries. We will build it, and we will provide Canadians with the power to take advantage of it. We are reducing expenses in order to be able to invest in youth, in hospitals, in infrastructure, in housing, in community centres, and more. All this is to ensure that youth have a good future here in Canada. I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Blanchet-Jonca.
Lawton for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Secretary, for being here today. You mentioned earlier a statement I hope is accurate, that everyone in this room is committed to protecting the most vulnerable, and by which, obviously, in your portfolio, it's children. So would that be fair that your portfolio, as the Secretary of State for Children and Youth, is about the well-being of children and youth in Canada?
Yes.
Okay. That wasn't a trick question. I appreciate your candor on that and giving a simple answer. I'm assuming are aware that a few weeks ago, the Supreme Court of Canada ruled that a mandatory minimum sentence for someone convicted of possessing and sharing child sexual exploitation and abuse material was cruel and unusual punishment, that a mandatory minimum sentence of even just 1 year. Now, the cases that led to this, in one of them, a gentleman from Quebec who had 317 images of children constituting what the court called child pornography. Of those images, 90% were, and I'm quoting the court decision, of young girls between 3 and 6 years of age, some showing victims being subjected to acts of penetration and sodomy committed by adults and minors. The other case involved another man, also from Quebec, who had 531 images, 274 videos of children from 5 to 10 years of age being subjected to sexual abuse, such as fellatio and vaginal and anal penetration by adults. And I do not enjoy reading those words. I know no one in this room enjoys hearing them. Do you believe that a mandatory minimum sentence of 1 year is cruel and unusual punishment?
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, is this within the bounds of the committee and certainly within the Secretary of State's portfolio? I think the member opposite would be
on the same point of order, Mr. Chair. In her very first response, the Secretary of State said her role is
Mr. Lawton, it is outside of the matter currently before the committee.
Chair, point of order. I'll challenge the chair on that.
Okay. I'm going to spend for 2 minutes. I'm going to spend.
Of measures in place to protect children. Unfortunately, the Conservatives voted against the act regarding harm online that would have helped us protect children from online predators. They also voted against and actively campaigned against the legal access tools under C2, which would have given children a number of tools that they have been asking for and their protectors have been asking for to protect them from predators. So it is very unfortunate the Conservatives have not supported these measures.
odd that your Liberal colleagues think this is outside of your mandate, but you had a pre-scripted answer there. I will ask a very simple question. Do you believe it is cruel and unusual punishment to impose a mandatory minimum sentence of 1 year on someone who preys on and re-victimizes children by consuming child sexual exploitation and abuse material? Yes or no?
J'appuie les lois et la législation que notre gouvernement met de devant pour protéger.
I support the legislation and laws that our government has set out to protect children. I encourage all members of Parliament to support this legislation that will protect children, and we will have a chance in the chamber and to discuss this in the weeks to come.
Do you believe that a 1-year sentence, which, by the way, in the original cases that I described, that sentence was not even given. One of the offenders was given 90 days of intermittent sentence by the court. And then later on, it was beefed up to a 1-year sentence. And this is what the Supreme Court now has said is cruel and unusual punishment. Do you think that these people should be getting house arrest and weekend sentences when they traumatize children?
Monsieur le Président, ça c'est vraiment à l'extérieur de mon mandat.
Mr. Chair, this is really outside my mandate. I am in favor of the legislation that our government is putting forward to protect children online and at school, wherever they may be. But at this point, this is Minister Fraser's purview. He is in charge of moving this forward, and it is up to all MPs to support the work for our children.
Is your view that what happens to children and youth in this country has no bearing on your role so long as the government gives them a sandwich at school?
Mon opinion, c'est qu'on a des lois qui sont présentées.
My opinion is that we have legislation being introduced in the House of Commons, and you will be able to vote in favor of them in the coming weeks. Several elements of legislation, and Minister Fraser will be happy to answer any questions.
Church for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Secretary of State, for being here today and for illuminating this committee with the work that this government is doing to protect children and to make it easier for families across the country to deal with some of the common expenses that families face. I do think that it's significant that in the past few weeks, and certainly reflected in the budget, which the members opposite voted in opposition to only yesterday evening, that the government announced its intention to make the National School Food Program permanent, making Canada actually the final country in the G7 to have a national school food program that aims to fill a gap in families' lives and in children's lives to ensure that kids do have healthy meals at school. Can you talk a little bit about, in your role, the impact that this is having and the organizations that have supported this, and the collaboration with provinces and territories to bring this program into fruition, and perhaps touch on both the impacts on kids, but also on the affordability that it offers for families as well when it's in full operation?
Thank you. I was going to call you Leslie, but I'm supposed to call you MP Church here, I think. So, merci pour la question. This program really is building on one that was put in place in 2024, and a number of our colleagues worked very hard to bring it forward in that budget with an investment of $1 billion over 5 years, which led very rapidly to agreements with all the provinces and territories and Indigenous partners. This program is very popular and is a great investment in families, as we have discussed. It represents a savings of around $800 a year in groceries for families of 2 children. It is ensuring that, where the need is greatest, as much as possible, children have access to food at school. This allows them, obviously, to learn on a full stomach, which means they're able to focus and pay attention. And visiting schools and speaking with teachers and stakeholders, it's clear that this has an impact on the children's capacity to learn at school and participate in school, which is obviously going to have long-term social economic outcomes for our families and for our society as a whole. We are also investing in the research to continue to understand better what this means downstream in terms of the outcomes, the positive impact this has on families, on children, on their development, on their health. It's also about learning healthy habits around nutrition and these kinds of things. So I think there's multiple ways and impacts that school food has. It is new, and so the goal now with making the program permanent will be to go back to negotiate with the provinces the next round of the funding and to ensure that we are getting the action reports back. I could let the deputy speak a little bit to that in terms of really being able to follow the investment and the impact it's having. Is there time for him to add to the reporting and the outcomes on that?
Sure, Deputy.
Food. We have 1 minute and a half.
So thank you for the question. Indeed, both on childcare and on school food, we've put in place robust reporting requirements so that Canadians are well informed of the results of the investments. We have a goal to achieve up to 400,000 additional children fed through the program, and there will be reporting made available to all Canadians in terms of the progress being made towards that goal, but we're quite optimistic based on the experience to date in meeting those targets.
I mean, as I understand it, it's part of a suite of measures that this government has actually introduced and continues to support that provide very important assistance to children and their families. I'd say from my perspective in Toronto St. Paul's, I know that there's families in my riding that are saving over $10,000 a year on childcare. And as someone who meets with employers regularly, I hear from employers the need for childcare for families. And actually additional space is an expansion of that program. Can you talk a little bit, maybe in the remaining moments that we have, about the importance of continuing to support childcare and its access and availability in Canada?
Certainly, it is a game changer for families, as I said in my opening remarks. Fees have come down dramatically by over 50% in many provinces, and we are under $10 a day in 8 jurisdictions, and we're going to continue to invest and defend and protect that program. We do need more spaces. There's a commitment, for example, in the Build Canada Homes mission to include, as MP de Rocher would know, to include more childcare as we build out. So it is not just at ESDC, but this is understood across government as an important investment in our future and in supporting parents in their capacity to join the workforce.
Thank you.
And good. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Church. Monsieur Blanchette-Jonca pour 2 minutes et 30.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
To as well.
Question to you, and could you answer it, please?
Point of order, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I think we've covered this off. This is not within the Secretary of State's purview. If the committee wishes to call the Minister of Justice in to come and speak to mandatory minimums, they're in their full capacity to do so.
Thank you, Ms. Church. The Minister has it's her prerogative to answer the questions as she sees them coming. You're appearing here under government mandates, Madam Minister, so Mr. Janis.
Thank you, Chair. And just on the same point of order, the committee is I understand, putting the question to the Minister. So, Minister, could you please respond to the question?
Question. Merci.
Excuse me, what is the question?
Clarify, the committee cannot put the question.
Yes, it can, Chair. The clerk can clarify for you. If a witness is not responding to a question, it then is the responsibility of the committee to put the question, and the Minister is obliged to answer it. Madame la Secrétaire,
thank you, Mr. John. Just to be clear, you cannot compel a witness to answer a question. A minister to answer a question.
Chair,
she is the Secretary of State, but she's a member of Privy Council. You cannot compel her to answer a question. You can pose the question in your own context, Mr. Janis.
Chair, I think we'll come back to this matter, but I'll move on to a different matter for the time being. Madam Secretary, could you clarify if student grants next year will be at $4,200 or will drop down to $3,000?
That's a good question, Deputy.
The current offering.
Can I just clarify, Minister, do you not know the answer?
I think I want to make sure that you get the right answer, so I would just want to be sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Thompson, please.
So I was just going to note that the Canada Student Grants are currently at 40% above the pre-pandemic levels, and the student loans are also above the pre-pandemic levels. There's been no decision taken on the resource profile for the following year at this point in time.
Essentially, the answer to my question is the government hasn't decided yet. Minister? Or whoever knows, the government hasn't decided yet whether they're going to extend that or change it.
There is no decision. That's correct on the future funding levels for that program at this time.
This is of course a point of great frustration to students, the lack of certainty around that and evident in the budget. Back to you, Madam Secretary. The budget proposes to eliminate student grants for students attending private for-profit institutions. Could you give me examples of what kinds of institutions you're targeting with this change? This is for the Secretary of State.
First round, we're going to go to the second round. Mr. Cooper for 5 minutes, 300 seconds. Just also want you to be mindful of the interpreters as well, please. So ask the question, response, ask the question, just to make sure that the interpreters everything's in sync here. So, okay, thank you. Go ahead, 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Bieber. I want to ask you some questions about carried interest payments that you alluded to earlier. Mr. Carney's ethics disclosure indicates that he is entitled to carried interest payments, which are essentially future bonus pay from the Brookfield Transition Fund 1, which he helped set up. Mr. Carney also co-chaired the Brookfield Transition Fund 2 as well as the Catalytic Transition Fund. Is Mr. Carney entitled to carried interest payments in respect of those funds?
No, he's not. And the reason for that is we were in the process of setting up those funds when Mr. Carney decided to leave Brookfield to pursue the Liberal leadership. And we had not yet instituted any allocation of carry from those funds. Those funds had not yet been raised. When we talk about launching a fund, we're starting the marketing of that fund, and they had not yet reached a conclusion, even an initial closing of those funds, and therefore we hadn't allocated any carry. Had he stayed with Brookfield, he certainly would have been entitled to some.
Thank you for that. And of course, he is entitled to carried interest payments in respect of the first fund, Brookfield Transition Fund 1. I just want to confirm that that fund is registered in Bermuda.
Registered in Bermuda? Yes, I believe that one is.
And the Brookfield Transition Fund 2 is also registered in Bermuda?
I don't have that information at hand.
Well, I would note a March 26, 2025 CBC News report that indicates that the Ontario Business Registry indicates that the governing jurisdiction for the Brookfield Global Transition Fund 1 and the Brookfield Global Transition Fund 2 is Bermuda. I presume you're not disputing that.
I won't dispute that.
And and I would also just ask that the Catalytic Transition Fund you'll confirm is registered in the Cayman Islands.
I can take that away and make sure that I'm not misspeaking on which jurisdiction it's part of.
I think you know the answer to that. It's yes. So I want to ask you a little bit about the schedule of payments with respect to carried interest from the Brookfield Transition Fund 1. When does the fund mature?
Transition Fund 1 would have a maturity of 10 years plus a 2-year possible extension, which would take it to 2032 to 34, I believe.
2032 or 2034. So it would be at that time that the carried interest payments would be paid out.
Towards that. And I would say that regardless of where the fund is actually established, everything that I mentioned in relation to Madame Lapointe's question hold for everything in that fund.
Now, just in terms of what is in that fund, there are new investments in that fund, correct?
There are investments in that fund. They're not necessarily new.
But if there were new investments in that fund, that would increase the value of carried interest payments, would that potentially?
If additional capital were invested in that fund, it could, if they're good investments.
Okay. Now, Brookfield CEO Bruce Flatt was quoted in a National Post article dated March 15th, 2025, in which he described carried interest payments in the following way, quote, "Put simply, carried interest is our..."
In 2012, former Immigration Minister Jason Kenney used one-time legislation in the 2012 budget to cancel specific applications. Why does the government need the powers outlined in this bill for application? Like, why couldn't you just put it in a piece of legislation?
Thank you for the question. So currently, no authorities exist to cancel applications en masse. The 2012 Federal Skilled Worker Inventory Elimination was accomplished through legislative amendments.
Right, but why couldn't you just do a piece of legislation?
Because it doesn't allow for the flexibility to define the public interest as well as...
Okay, so you, as the bureaucracy, want to be able to determine that without going through Parliament?
No. The policy intent is to be able to quickly respond to emergencies, crises, health issues.
So why didn't you define what public interest means in the legislation then?
Because there are so many potential instances. So that's why we were trying to say health, security.
But why isn't that defined in the legislation?
Because it just would too closely, I think, restrict us to only being able to apply a recommendation to the OIC.
It's a fairly big devolution of power to the bureaucracy from Parliament, and I'm trying.
Testimony, appreciate it very much. Mr. Chalk, I appreciated your comments and also your board chair of Solus Power, I believe his name is Neil Desai. Yes, he's made some interesting comments over the last number of months that I wanted to put to you, and I think they're certainly quite in line with what you're putting forward. He said, the number one issue I see for our country is that our economics don't work. He went on to say structures in Canada around talent, capital, intellectual property, companies' freedom to operate look very different only a decade ago, with entrepreneurs saying that a welcoming and supportive ecosystem put wind in their sails at that time. He then said, but those structures have changed during the last 10 years. The wind has actually been in their face of the entrepreneurs who are trying to do this at scale from Canada for the benefit of all Canadians. And he really describes Canada as having, quote, this weird innovations ecosystem structural problem not seen in other countries, where intermediaries such as financiers, universities, and business incubators and accelerators are put at the center for validating business. Everywhere else, the business gets to validate business. So with your comments on IP, obviously we need a very robust ecosystem to support the scale-ups that you've talked about. So in light of some of his comments, can you give the committee a few more ideas and for our policy discussion of what the Canadian government should be doing to facilitate this type of renewed ecosystem for entrepreneurs?
Thank you very much. That's a complex question. I'll try to do my very best to answer it. I certainly can't speak for Neil Desai, but I would say having the incubators and all the various supports you see for small business startups and what, well, not so much scale-ups, but certainly startups in Canada is a very healthy thing, and you see a lot.
Precise and as concise as you can, so we can get enough questions in. So I begin for the Conservatives with Mr. Mazier for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome, Dr. Houston. Dr. Houston, how many foreign doctors did the University of Toronto train last year through the visa trainee program?
So last year, in total, we had 459 physicians in this program.
Program. Okay.
In the residency program.
Thank you.
And the fellowship program. So total residency and fellowship.
How many returned to their home country after training?
They are all expected to return to their home country. It is part of the contract that we have with their sponsor that the trainee also signs on to.
How many visa trainees completed their training at the University of Toronto last year?
I don't have that exact number, but I can provide it to you because they range from PGY 1s to PGY 7s. We accept between 2 and 4 residents into family medicine, and they return after 2 years. Those in the Royal College specialty and subspecialties train for a variable number of years, depending on the residency program.
So you have a rough idea, like 1,000, 500?
Oh, no, not that large. So if we have 459 in the program, the maximum we could send out in any given year would be 459.
Okay, if you could forward that information, that'd be
I will
great.
certainly give you the information as to how many graduated last year.
Okay, and then how many Canadian medical students graduated from the University of Toronto last year?
So the current cohort is 303 students that came in, and last year I believe we graduated 259 students. And the reason for the discrepancy is that we have expanded our medical school numbers, our cohort, in the last years due to increased funding.
Yep, I got my number. Thank you so much. How much does a single Saudi-sponsored visa trainee pay to the University of Toronto per year of training?
To Mrs. Anstey for 6 minutes.
Thank you. And thank you to the witnesses for being here today. I've sat in, and we've had a few of these meetings now, and a lot of the conversation has been very similar. And I want to return to something that my colleague touched on in our last meeting, and that's with respect to the constituency concerns that we have around the EV mandates, and especially as that translates out in rural areas. And one of the responses that we've commonly gotten is this notion that it's really just a result of myths or misinformation that's been spreading with respect to the EV mandates. And so my translation of that is that the government just hasn't convinced the Canadian public yet. And so I want to respond today with some of the realities of the rural communities that I represent. And I just want to start and say that just because these concerns or this information comes from around kitchen tables or the floors of dealerships in rural communities doesn't mean that it's misinformed or rural people's voices are just not well educated enough. So if you would just allow me to sort of give you some information about my riding, and then I'm going to allow you to respond. The riding that I represent is 47,000 square kilometers and extremely sparsely populated. So as an example, we have communities that have 150 people, 40 or 50 people. And the low density alone of my riding makes the rollout of charging infrastructure fundamentally different from an urban center. So we can't assume that the solutions for Toronto and Vancouver are going to translate well out into some of these more rural areas. Now, I just want to give you some context here. If you live in St. Anthony in Newfoundland and Labrador, you have to travel 470 kilometers to deliver your baby. Now, if something happens while you're in the hospital and, heaven forbid, that child has to go to a NICU, that's over 1,000 kilometers from this community. So these are some of the challenges that these people are facing. In addition to that, there's 3 communities in my riding, Grey River, Francois, Ramia. You can only get there by ferry. No charging infrastructure in any of these places. These are some of the really rural components that we're talking about. And I know we're often framing these conversations to say, you know, you don't need to buy an EV today. But practically speaking, whether that's 7 or 5 or 4 years down the road, whether it's a 20% or an 80%, it might as well be 100% given what these people are looking at right now. So my question is, especially as it relates to this myth-busting narrative, because another piece of this is we're asking these people able to pay $15,000 to $20,000 more in upfront costs for a lot of these vehicles, which absolutely don't make any sense for the communities and the areas that they live in. I think that when we're having these conversations, I get extremely frustrated because I feel it's deeply dismissive of the lived experience of rural Canadians in some of these really rural and remote areas. And it's not just about educating them. It's about really understanding the dynamics. When you also look at these family-owned and operated repair shops, they don't have the upfront money to invest in new electrification within these areas or specialized technicians. So, you know, these seem like some pretty far-fetched concepts for people living in these rural communities. So I just kind of wanted to put it out there to either of you, actually, to sort of walk me through, based on the picture that I've just painted for you, what you feel is, how do I respond to my constituents who look at me and say, this makes absolutely no sense to me? Can you help me?
So I'm going to be delivering a series of rapid-fire questions at you. I'll be asking whether you agree with the statement or not. It would elicit a yes or a no. I'm not seeking an explanation.
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys, does that ever sound promising? MP Larry Brock with a list of rapid-fire questions, yes or no answers. Do you think that's how it's going to go? Let's take a peek. Larry Brock is one of our favorites to watch on here. He's engaging, entertaining, and sharp as a razor blade. Let's check out Larry and his rapid-fire questions. Let's see if we get any yes or no answers. Let's take a peek.
Mr. Brock.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, witnesses. Thank you for your attendance. I am primarily going to start with you, Ms. Thomas. I'm going to be delivering a series of rapid-fire questions at you. I'll be asking whether you agree with the statement or not. It would elicit a yes or a no. I'm not seeking an explanation. You'd agree with me that this country is bound by the rule of law?
Yes.
That every Canadian, including the Prime Minister, his cabinet, senior public servants, and most importantly, the Department of Justice, is also bound by the rule of law?
Yes.
And no one, including the Prime Minister, is above that law, correct?
Correct.
Now, I'm going to be delivering a series of statements from former Cabinet Minister Perrin Beatty, the chief architect of the Emergencies Act, that this committee should press for any information to help Canadians understand the rationale for invocation and test against both the facts and the deliberately high threshold that is required. Very reactive as opposed to proactive. One company alone had built 36 different federal departments, billing for the same hours in a given day. Why was that not detected in 2018 when they submitted their invoices with your advanced data analytics? Why wasn't that caught, Minister?
Everyone has an opinion about Canadian federal politics.
Oh, yeah.
What's up, gang? Just Aaron right here, Canadian Loonie. We try to learn as much as we can about Canadian federal politics. We didn't pay attention for a couple of years. Things went out of hand. And now we have this Trudeau, Jagmeet, Liberal NDP coalition, Polyev waiting in the wings just for an election because 70% of Canadians want an election now. That's what the polls say. There are so many things happening. So many scams and scandals with this Trudeau, NDP, Liberal, Jagmeet coalition. It's just a mess. A corrupt cabinet of unlikable ministers. So many things going on. Let's take a peek at this. Cue the card. Let's see what we're going to watch in this next video. Things here are wild. Let's see what we got coming up.
Horizontal audit yesterday.
I'll ask a direct question. Have you, to this date, been in direct contact with all departments and agencies regarding privacy impact assessments, particularly as it relates to the story that broke on the 13 departments? Have you reached out to everybody?
With our team through annual reporting, Dom, could you fulfill that?
Very quickly, because I'm respectful of your time. Departments and agencies are responsible for providing personal information banks for all their programs and activities.
Respectfully, sir, the question was to the president. The president did not answer it. It just was a simple, you just said, like, take responsibility as the president. Did you reach out to everybody, Anita? Yes or no? It's that simple. If it's no, then it's no.
Okay. Minister, quickly.
Yes, the department has been in contact. Thank you for the question.
Wasn't that hard?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Green. Mr. Brock for 5. Go ahead, please.
Thank you, Chair. Minister, privacy is extremely important to Canadians and public servants, but so is safeguarding the prudent use of taxpayer funds. Federal spending on outsourcing increased to $14.6 billion last year, which is 74% higher than when the Liberals under Justin Trudeau promised in 2015 to cut back on the use of external consultants. We now have evidence that the ArriveCan ballooned to at least $60 million. What you announced yesterday with your colleague, Minister Duclos, in my view, is only the tip of the iceberg, because Minister Duclos confirmed yesterday that the 3 companies in question that fraudulently billed taxpayers $5 million had nothing to do with ArriveCan, which brings into the broader question of that $14.6 billion in outsourcing, how many billions of dollars, how many millions of dollars more in fraudulent contracting schemes are out there? I know you talk about advanced data analytics, and this is how you uncovered the data. But the government always had this data capability. So the biggest problem that Canadians have with your government, Minister, is you're very reactive as opposed to proactive. One company alone had built 36 different federal departments, billing for the same hours in a given day. Why was that not detected in 2018 when they submitted their invoices with your advanced data analytics? Why wasn't that caught, Minister?
I want to specify that the Treasury Board did not have any involvement with the development of the ArriveCan Act.
I'm talking in a broader sense.
And
why wasn't the government able, with the capabilities of data analytics, to capture this in 2018 when it happened?
The app was built on an emergency basis under exceptional circumstances.
And the Auditor General basically said that a pandemic and the urgency does not mean you throw out the rules out the window. You had an obligation to safeguard taxpayer monies, and you abused that. You misused that. So what assurances do Canadians have that we're going to get to the bottom of the millions, if not billions of dollars?
Respecting.
Let me finish the question. What assurance can you give Canadians that you're going to actually follow up, you're going to identify these companies, you're going to refer it to the RCMP for possible investigation and criminal charges? What can you say about that?
I agree with the findings of the Auditor General's report. That is why I published yesterday an update to the Manager's Guide on Professional Services. I have also tabled through a series of estimates that we are reducing our reliance on outsourcing, including in the estimates prior to the holidays, $350 million in outsourcing contracts being reduced. Furthermore,
opportunity to have the motion presented by Madame Dancho a few moments ago circulated in both official languages to members of committee. I think an adequate amount of time has been given for consideration of this motion. We will now enter into debate on this motion. Ms. Borelli had her hand up, and those are the only, that's the only hand that I have currently on my speaking list. I have Madame O'Rourke. You weren't, because you were on the speaking list prior to the motion, but we're all yes, but we're all going to get to it.
I'm sure you do.
Mr. Falk,
it's going to be riveting.
Mr. Falk, I assure you, there's plenty of time for everybody to speak, so we'll get to you. So I have Ms. Borelli, Madame O'Rourke, Mr. Falk, Mr. Guglian. What do you mean? What do you mean, Guglian?
What do you mean, Guglian?
Guglian. I got it.
I've been here one day. Come on.
All right.
Do you put your name on the list to speak?
Well, we're in public.
I know.
I'm covered, but my colleagues want to.
So then I raise my hand.
OK, Monsieur Saint-Marie. Merci tout le monde. All right.
So sweet.
I will not pronounce your name again, sir. With us on the line.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to speak in favor of the motion. We've seen time and time again where the government has entered into contracts with companies and handed out billions of taxpayers' dollars in subsidies without securing guarantees for Canadian workers. Taxpayers are demanding transparency, and workers deserve job guarantees. The government needs to answer for their incompetence with the contracts. Thank you.
OK. Thank you, Ms. Borelli. Madame O'Rourke.
Carr. So we hear it in the House of Commons every day, and we have known that we are in a trade war. The government of the United States is attacking our core industries with impunity and attacking us particularly egregiously in the steel sector, because every independent sovereign country needs to have its own steel industry. And so that is what is egregious in this context. It's clear, and I believe that some of the leaders in Sault Ste. Marie have said so, that the federal government investments are actually improving a situation that would have been far worse, and is allowing Algoma Steel to retain roughly 2/3 of the jobs. Federal government support is also helping Algoma Steel to transition to a new way of manufacturing, a way that is green. But nonetheless, it's just awful for 1,000 families to receive layoff notices just a couple of weeks before the holidays. And I don't think there's a Canadian who doesn't feel for them. And I am more interested in looking at how we can provide supports immediately. And in fact, a report to the House at this point would take up some of the time remaining before the holiday break. And in that time, what we need to do is to pass the budget, which has a number of measures that will actually help these families immediately. And those include several new employment insurance provisions that combine permanent enhancements and temporary measures that respond to economic uncertainty, sadly, for these exact situations. The federal budget also has a number of measures to support tariff-affected industries so that they can sustain, if not all of their workers, then some of their workers. And it creates a pathway. The government of Canada and all of the parties in the House of Commons need to be supporting these workers and these industries through what is a really difficult time. So some of the things that we find in Budget 2025 that we should pass before the holidays, that we should make use of House time, and the members could speak to these challenges in the context of the debate on C-15, which is the Budget Implementation Act. Some of those things are faster access to EI benefits. So the 1-week waiting period for EI claims has been waived for claims.
That we can effectively and efficiently undertake our study without dipping into time for witnesses. So we're doing all of this in good faith. Madame Dancho, I will recognize you. The floor is yours, as I believe you have a motion or more to present to us.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A very important motion to move and discuss today. The motion is as follows: that the committee report to the House that it condemns the unjustified American tariffs on the Canadian auto sector, and that it calls upon the government to live up to its promises made during the election to negotiate a win for workers whose livelihoods depend on a good deal for Canada. So, Mr. Chair, just to be clear, the objectives of this motion are threefold. First, that the Standing Committee of Industry and Technology of Canada sends a formal, formally reported notice to the House that we condemn the American auto tariffs. I think that would send a very strong signal coming from this powerful standing committee. And secondly, that we call on the Liberal government to fulfill its promise and deliver a good deal for our auto workers. I think that's perfectly reasonable. And again, very critically, if this motion passes today, it will allow for the opportunity for the House of Commons to formally debate what's happening to the Canadian auto sector. And again, that is a very critical piece of this motion. And just for the committee's awareness, I just want to outline the magnitude of what we're facing in this country. Given the U.S. tariffs on Canadian auto sector. So the auto sector is about a $14 billion contribution to the Canadian GDP. And every job in automotive assembly supports about 9 additional jobs, the highest external benefit multiplier of any sector in Canada. And that's coming right from the Centre of Automotive Research. 92% of motor vehicle exports go to the U.S.
We're going to start right off the bat with Mr. Cooper for 6 minutes. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner, on April 30th, 2 days after the federal election, Mark Carney was personally lobbied by North River Midstream. North River Midstream is a Brookfield portfolio company that is subject to the ethics screen. Did Mr. Carney or his office contact you prior to meeting with North River Midstream?
As I told you before, any conversation I have with Mr. Carney, etc., is confidential. If there's anything made public, it's from him, not from us.
Thank you for that. But we know that Mr. Carney was lobbied by North River Midstream. Mr. Carney, on May 6th, a week later, met with Sam Pollock, the CEO of Brookfield Infrastructure in Washington, D.C. Brookfield Infrastructure is also subject to the ethics screen. It has recently come to light that in October, Mr. Carney met with the Chief Operating Officer of Brookfield, Justin Bieber, in the Prime Minister's office. So here we have a pattern of Mr. Carney meeting with top Brookfield executives who have direct access to the Prime Minister, as well as Brookfield-owned companies. Is this what you envisioned when you set up the ethics screen?
I wish you would not focus on the ethics screen, but understand the system. The system is clear.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak on Bill C-15, the Budget Implementation Act. The best that can be said of this budget is that it is not as advertised. The Finance Minister advertised the budget as a generational shift. The Prime Minister advertised the budget as bold. This budget doesn't represent a generational shift, and it most certainly is not bold. If anything, it is completely underwhelming. It represents more of the same failed policies that we have seen over the past 10 years from these Liberals. More spending, more debt, and more broken promises. Indeed, just about every fiscal and budgetary commitment that the Prime Minister made to Canadians a few short months ago during the federal election, he
as individuals that live in our communities, but also as government, they are critical to our economy, but also to the livelihood of many of the Canadian citizens. We will continue to work with them.
When was that until?
Permanent resident population. We know that.
So we just have a limited amount left, and so I'm going to split the limited time we have left with for 3 minutes with Mr. Davies and 3 minutes for Mr. Connors. Mr. Davies for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just as a housekeeping question or request on behalf of my colleague, Mr. Redekop, I wonder if the Minister, if she might provide us with a report on the status of all pending Yazidi PSR claims, cases in Canada, if that's possible. We're just looking for a report. I don't need a verbal answer now, but just looking for some additional information. Is that fair enough?
I'll look into that. I don't know if it's possible, but I will look.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Dew. Now, I would like to thank the witnesses very much for taking the time.
Point of order.
I'm sorry you had to wait for so long. Yes, Mr. Major.
I was just wondering if we have a few minutes left. I didn't know if, since it's Block's study, if we just give her 2.5 more minutes, another round?
Well, this is a round in which you...
But I'll give it to you next.
Thank you, Ms. Sidhu. Now, I would like to thank the witnesses.
To which it's important to respect some standards, to wash one's hands properly to prevent disease. And even there was a lot of awareness. We did this even in hospitals. And so it reminds me the extent to which this is important. So my next question might be for Dr. Stinson. What are the most important obstacles for prevention strategies in different settings, hospitals, CHSLDs, clinics?
Oui, merci pour la question. Donc,
Thank you for your question. I'll answer in English.
So in terms of overall barriers, I mean, you're certainly right. Hand hygiene is probably one of the most consistently significant methods of preventing transmission of infectious disease and antimicrobial resistant organisms in all health settings. One of the barriers that we often see to implementing that is overall resources. And so when you think of, and I believe it was Dr. El Sayed had alluded to the challenges we see in healthcare right now of over census, too many patients, resource limitations. When you compound all of those factors.
Bonsoir tout le monde. Hello. Yes, great. Un peu de calme. So for those who were wondering, I am flying solo tonight. Thank you. I was going to start with this evening with the Alain acknowledgement, but Tim Hodgson wouldn't let me. And if you're not happy about my jokes, we can have a chat on Zoom later if you're... So I work for the Journal de Montréal. For the Anglos who don't know the Journal, it's kind of like Postmedia's Toronto Sun. It's foreign owned and real popular with that one uncle at Thanksgiving. Donc à cause de la crise des médias, cette soirée est commanditée par Brookfield cette année. Mais faites-vous-en pas, le gala est sous la supervision et approuvé par le commissaire à l'éthique. And as we've learned, it's important to have blind trust in the commissioner. Right, Mr. Carney? Talking about Brookfield, I'm just curious, where's Rosie? When you looked inside yourself, what did you find? No, just kidding. Our main sponsor tonight is actually the Prime Minister's other former employer, Bloomberg. Yeah. An American news outlet. Bloomberg, who's also with half of the PMO tonight. Great job, everyone. Way to keep your elbows up. I think we can all agree this year has been utterly insane. We could even say it was transformative, generational. Never seen since 1945. That's why Canada needs to think big, seize the opportunity, go from dependence to resilience, from uncertainty to prosperity, so we can spend less to invest more and build Canada strong. Sorry, guys, I think I had too much champagne. But it's true the last 18 months have been crazy. Just a year ago, Justin Trudeau was clinging to power with political gimmicks. Pierre Poilievre was eating an apple and enjoying a 20-point lead. And the NDP was an official party in the House. Now, Mark Carney is Canada's daddy. Poilievre's apple is more of a crumble. And the NDP, well, they're still saving the Liberals' bottom. You know what else did not change? The deficit is sky high, and Jenny Byrne is still terrorizing Conservatives. You may not know this, but in Conservative circles, she's known as Jenny from the block, from the butcher's block. Sorry. By the way, Conservatives, if you're in distress and need to leave your caucus, you can whisper to your server, "Bring it home." And Mickey Jurich will be right there with you. Jokes aside, the Conservative Party just hired a new campaign manager, Steve Outhouse, who's with us tonight. Welcome. I guess they're hoping to have more success in the Ring of Fire. Too spicy? Diplomacy in Canada also changed a lot in a few months. Sitting with us tonight at the same table, no less, India's High Commissioner and China's Ambassador. Welcome. Oh, just to make sure, Dan Rogers, can you hear me well? I'm just checking. I'm just sensing a little bit of interference. You okay? Speaking of interference, I'm still looking for the American ambassador. Has anyone seen him? No? No one? Fuck it. They started it. So Prime Minister Carney, since this is your first time to this event, we want to make sure that you're as comfortable as possible. The press gallery put in place a few rules. Formal attire only. No brown shoes. The menu is in British spelling. And Karina Gould is sitting far away in the overflow room. Mais faites-vous-en pas, Mme Gould est pas seule. Hein? Elle est avec ses collègues Bill Blair, Jonathan Wilkinson, Jean-Yves Duclos, Chrystia Freeland, puis une addition de dernière minute, hein, Stephen Guilbeault. Certains diraient que c'est là où le vrai Parti libéral est assis. Thank you. D'ailleurs, les fêtes s'en viennent, M. Carney. Avez-vous acheté tous vos cadeaux de Noël pour tous vos filleuls? Aussi, pour rendre certaines personnes à l'aise, on a préparé un plat spécial. Un steak d'autruche pour Marjorie Michel. Et comme dessert, pour Jean Charest, des petits brownies. On a aussi plusieurs autres invités d'honneur ce soir avec nous. Le juge en chef de la Cour suprême, Richard Wagner. Bonsoir. Content de vous voir en chair et en os, M. Wagner, comme on est surtout habitué de vous voir en bronze. Thank you as well to Dan Rogers, the head of CSIS, for being here tonight. So to ensure your safety, we made Bob Fife and Steve Chase wear ankle bracelets. And it's a good thing you're with Chris Nardi tonight, because this guy gets away with anything. Last year was crazy, but did you guys notice how the Hill got a little quieter, though? Like the scrums are just more chill. All right, Marika Walsh is on mat leave. We love Marika. But there's one person I won't be making fun of tonight. It's David Cochrane. I don't want to end up like Travis Downraj and have to launch my own podcast. Not doing it. Speaking of early retirement, the National Defense is still trying to figure out how to make Murray Brewster step down. And you know, the economy, yes, Murray. Great job, Murray. And you know the economy is really bad when even Bob Fife can't afford to retire. And his salary is tariff-free. But at least we know there can be life after politics. Xav and Justin Trudeau are trying to enter the pop music industry in their own way. Well, at least one of them is having some sex. Success. 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 Alors, le chef du Bloc québécois est ici ce soir aussi. Bonsoir, M. Blanchet. M. Blanchet était content de savoir qu'Antoine Trépanier quittait le beat québécois du National Post, jusqu'à ce qu'il réalise qu'Antoine s'en allait à la presse, puis qu'il allait la faire d'en face encore plus souvent. En tout cas, Antoine va réaliser que citer Blanchet en français, c'est pas toujours plus facile qu'en anglais. But he's not the only one that changed camps this year. You might think the crown goes to Chris d'Entremont. But I would argue my fiancée, Najud Al-Malise, is hard to beat. She went from CP to the Globe and Mail to Bloomberg in the span of 9 months. I hope she's more loyal in her personal life than professional. Here I was going to make a joke about Stuart Benson from the Hell Times. No. Stuart, you've been the center of attention enough this year. Mais on sait, c'est pas facile pour certains médias. Bell Media fait même faire des hits en français à Mike Lecouteur à nouveau. Il faut être dans la marde, pareil. Le Devoir, lui, il a perdu la moitié de son lectorat à Ottawa quand les 10 députés bloquistes défaits ont annulé leur abonnement. En même temps, il faut dire que la compétition n'était pas féroce cette année. Hein? C'était qui l'autre candidat? Élisa Serret, c'est ça? Sorry. So the Conservative leader is also here tonight. Surprise, surprise, Jamil Giovanni, nice to see you. Where is he? Nice to see you. You already have your slogan and your hat, Restore the North. Did you workshop that with J.D. Vance? Like on a couch? Many other Conservatives are here tonight. Jean Charest, Lisa Raitt, Jason Kenney, Corey Teneycke. There's also many Carney supporters here tonight. Jean Charest, Lisa Raitt, Jason Kenney, Corey Teneycke. Big tent. Huge tent. Mais je trouve pas Andrew Scheer, par contre. Il est derrière le rideau? No, it's been a tough few weeks for Pierre Poilievre, but if he needs some advice, he could speak to our president, Mia Rabson, because surprisingly, there has been no defection yet at CP this year. Congratulations, Mia. Okay, enough of me, everyone. Please welcome Don Newman and J.D. Bellavance to present the Charles Lynch Award.
C'est long, merci. Good evening, everybody. It's a real surprise. We're here again to present the Charles Lynch Award. And it's nice to see the Prime Minister here. It's nice to see a real Prime Minister here. Don't you think, JD? Because, yeah. And, but it only means one thing. The Ottawa airport is fogged in tonight, and he's writing something on his phone to really let me have it. But anyway.
Probably changing his speech again.
The Charles Lynch Award has been presented since 1997 to a member of the gallery who has been chosen by a kind of random process of jurors that changes from year to year, but is mainly comprised of people who have won it before, including JD, who won it in when, 2016?
That's
yes.
correct, yep.
So, so you have to have a pretty high standard if you're going to win it, because JD set a standard, but others have set the standard too. And so we get together, and it's a really good prize because for the people who are doing the selection, there's no guidelines. You can pick a person who has done a hot story that everybody in the gallery has followed all year. You can pick someone who's been in the gallery for 20 years or more and has been a Lifetime Achievement Award. It can be a young person, it can be an old person, it can be francophone, it can be anglophone, it can be a woman, a man. I really like this prize, and that's why I've been connected with it as long as I have. But this year we have a worthy recipient, as we do every year, and the person does not know who they are yet. And the recipient usually is mad after they win it because they didn't know they were going to win it, and they have to come up here and speak, and they say, well, if you told me, I could have prepared something and be good. But we don't want that. We want spontaneity, and that's partly what I think makes journalism good. So, JD, this is a good year for the... Hello, Mr. Speaker. How are you?
It is a good year. And before I do...
Continue this on the next round. We've now moved to the second round, and we begin for 5 minutes with Ms. Rempel-Garner.
Thank you. Minister, in late September, the Toronto Star reported that there was over 1 million temporary residents that had expiring visas, and yesterday Statistics Canada said that they had not counted 38% of non-citizens. No wonder that Canadians can't find a family doctor. Will you support an amendment to ensure that your department cannot use the Part 7 powers of C-12 to mass extend temporary resident visas?
Thank you, member, for that question. I know you brought that forward on the committee, and look, I know you worked hard on these, and we appreciate. Well,
this is a new one. So
this is a new one.
Yes,
ask
it's
again.
on notice.
Then. So this is a different one than
yes,
you brought on the committee.
So will you support an amendment to ensure that your department cannot use the Part 7 powers to mass extend temporary resident visas?
Mass extend. So did you not bring that to committee?
I used procedure in the House, which I can do.
Okay. So when we go back to the House, members will vote
here.
on that.
You're here. Is your department going to use the Part 7 powers to mass extend temporary resident visas?
That is not the purpose for that.
It's a yes or a no.
What I'm saying is that is not the purpose for those amendments.
No, I'm asking you.
The one example I will give you is during COVID, my understanding is the workers that were here at the time, and this is facts, were not allowed to leave the country, who were working here temporarily. So I believe that was an occasion where they could have, or may
so they
extended
did. You do
them
want
to
to
stay
mass
during COVID.
So you do want to mass extend temporary resident visas?
That's not what I said.
That's exactly what you just said.
That's not the purpose for C-12.
So I am taking it that the purpose of those powers, based on what you just said, is to mass extend the millions of temporary resident visas that are in the country.
I believe I testified when I was here before on the immigration provisions in C2, which are identical to C12.
You didn't testify on this.
No, but the same thing would follow on the whether you extend or the opposite of extending, annulling. These are in exceptional circumstances. These are not something that we
there's
look to do.
There's 3 million people in the country on temporary resident visas. That is an exceptional circumstance. It's never happened before in Canadian history. It happened under your government. In the spring, you told me your government has no plans to remove them. You just said that if you had these powers during COVID, you would have extended temporary resident visas. So I don't want you to use your powers to extend temporary resident visas. That's bad. So can you tell the committee whether or not you intend to use those powers to extend the visas or not?
Let me clarify. No one minister will have that power individually, whether you're extending or doing the opposite of the extension.
So here's the thing.
These will go to cabinet. These will go to an OIC.
Yes.
These will be transparent. These are not something that will be done.
So just to be clear, our emergency rooms are overflowing. We have a youth jobs crisis. The provinces, including Quebec, are telling you that they need more money because of the temporary residents. And you are now telling the committee that it is highly possible that you are going to use the powers in Part 7 to do that. No, this is my line of...
No, point of order, Ms. Rempel-Garner. Point of order, Mr. Frederick.
For the purposes of the record, I did not hear the minister say those words. Let's just be clear about what was said
point of order?
and what was not said.
We are restarting your time, Ms. Rempel-Garner.
On that point of order.
You have another point of order?
Yes, I do. I appreciate that my colleague may likely be the minister in a couple of months.
Not a point of order.
But for now, I get to ask the current minister.
Not a point of order.
Thank you.
So please continue with your time.
Maybe I will be having this conversation with him in a couple of months. So, Minister, I understand the Liberals want to silence me and rescue you. They shouldn't let him rescue you. He's going to have your job. Will you support an amendment to ensure that your government can't mass extend 3 million people because you have no plan to remove them? Yes or no? And this is really bad. Can you just
listen,
be clear?
member? When you ask a question, I think you should be able to have decency to let someone respond. If you don't like any responses, then please continue.
I don't like your word
like.
salad. It's true. You are a very bad minister.
Oh, you know what? I prefer fattoush and tabbouleh to your salad at any time.
That is the oddest thing any immigration minister has said at this committee. It's very weak.
It's my culture.
Will likely be added to your performance review. So will you support a Part 7 amendment to ensure that your government cannot use the mass extension powers the powers in Part 7 to mass extend millions of temporary resident visas?
So, member, you're free to make any amendments you like within the procedure that is there. I will take a look, just like any reasonable minister, reasonable whatever.
Do you think millions of residents should be extended?
Minister. Thank you, Ms. Rempel-Garner. That is time. Next, we have Michelle Rempel-Garner for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. In December of 2023, a non-citizen went to a hotel here in Canada to meet a 15-year-old for sex, in which he had agreed to pay for these services. He only received 3 months of house arrest and was allowed to go shopping for 3 hours every Sunday throughout these 3 months. His sentencing was lessened so as not to affect his immigration status. Do you think the criminal inadmissibility component, so Section 36(1) of the Immigration Refugee Protection Act, do you think that kept Canadians safe here in this situation?
Thank you, member, for that question. I know you know that sentencing decisions are made independently by the courts, where the federal government, though, is responsible for the law is for removals. But under the immigration law, a non-citizen convicted of a serious violent is subject to deportation.
Right, but I'll just stop you there for a sec. So you're actually, since you've had trouble understanding questions today, you, as the immigration minister, surprise, are You're actually responsible for the Immigration and Refugee Protection Act. And that section is under your portfolio. So this guy was convicted of a serious crime. They used a loophole in Section 36(1) to ensure that his sentence was reduced so that he could stay in Canada. Is that good or bad?
So there is no federal law that requires judges to reduce a sentence because of immigration consequences. That is the truth.
Right. So I'm asking you about Section 36. I'm just going to remind you, this is part of your portfolio. So this is your department. Do you think that section is working? Do you think that, I'll give you another example. There's a 25-year-old who was on a study permit. He sexually assaulted an 18-year-old at a club in my city in Calgary. He was found guilty, and the judge reduced his sentence because of that provision in that bill you're responsible for. The definition of serious criminality, it doesn't work. I just want to feel like, do you think that's bad? Like, do you think that maybe we should change that so that people who are non-citizens who are convicted of things like sexual assault get auto-deported rather than just kind of sticking around and doing it again, maybe?
So we have legislation.
Indigenous Services Canada. Mr. Chair, I'm going to stop here, and I'm happy to take questions from members of the committee.
Thank you, Minister. And the floor is yours for 6 minutes, Mr. Brandon Leslie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Now, at the UN's International Maritime Organization meeting, your government voted in favor of new net zero carbon tax on shipping. Witnesses told this committee that tax could cost up to $500 per ton, which will obviously get passed on to Canadians through higher prices of everything that we buy that's shipped here. Do you have any idea whatsoever what this is going to cost Canadians through higher prices?
Thank you for that question, and through you, Mr. Chair. This has been a long-going issue that I hear from questions coming from the Conservatives, which is that the idea that any action on climate change is a net negative, not only for our country, but for the world. We know that the impacts of climate change.
I'm just looking for the cost of the tax. If
Pardon
implemented,
me?
has the department or have done any estimates on what the tax would cost the average item in Canada and therefore Canadians that's passed on to?
So as far as the policies that we have in place, we already, and I have said this before, but actions such as the industrial carbon price do not increase the cost of food for Canadians, do not. And so when we're talking about the actual policies that we have in place in Canada, we do actually, whenever we pass a regulation, provide a regulatory assessment which is made available. It's transparent and available.
Thank you, Minister. I look forward to seeing that once that tax is implemented. But you talked about the policies that are still in place, and for years, you defended every major climate policy that this government has introduced: the carbon tax on consumers, the $2 billion tree planting program, the emissions cap on oil and gas, the greenwashing regulations, the EV mandate. Then overnight, they have been delayed, watered down, or abandoned entirely. Now, every time one of these policies seems to collide with reality, it falls apart. So what should Canadians conclude from this pattern of you supporting policies and then having to step back from them?
I think what Canadians should take from the work that our government is doing is that we are working forward for policies that are collaborative, meet the needs of Canadians, and fight climate change. We have very much set forward, and it says it in the climate competitiveness strategy, which was in the budget, that we are working to strengthen the industrial carbon price, strengthen methane regulations. We're working on a taxonomy for investment guidelines. We are taking real actions, and we're doing.
You should just throw back at them. Who cares? Anytime you hear Mark Carney talking about trade with the US or tariffs on Canadian exports, you should just say, who cares, change the channel, and tune him out.
Are we to take that this is that Mr. Champagne didn't do his job and that there's something you can do that he didn't do? Because he's now the finance minister and he was part of the same government that made the decision based on, what F-35 was offering. So did he do something wrong?
Who cares? It will take some sacrifices. And it will take some time.
Gang, what's up? Aaron here, Canadian Loonie. I must confess, Andrew Scheer, I think, is the funniest guy in the House of Commons. But he makes these other videos. Gotta show you, like, there's so much information jammed into these videos, but he makes it funny and entertaining. Like, keeps it pretty light, but there is a lot of dark truths in this video. Let's take a look. Mark Carney is about to be exposed again. When are the Liberal voters going to catch on? I'm pretty sure Andrew Scheer will keep you engaged for a few minutes here, but we also have Minister of Industry Melanie Joly at the end of this. Just a couple of quick questions, but watch how she fumbles the ball. Like, poor Melanie Joly's on her way to France. They must have great Kool-Aid over there, or Coke, or good pop, or something. Anyhow, let's get into Andrew Scheer. He's one to watch, very entertaining.
Have you ever shared a problem in your life with someone? Maybe you lost your job, struggling to make bill payments. Maybe it's even trouble in a relationship. And then the response back is, who cares?
No! No! After lunch, can I whip you?
Nope.
Oh, no fair. Ow!
I wonder what makes it turn.
Who cares?
Imagine if the person who said, who cares, is the person in your life who's supposed to care, who you actually hired to care, who gets paid by your tax dollars to care. Well, that's exactly what Mark Carney did to every single Canadian who's suffering under unfair tariffs from the U.S. administration.
It's not an endorsement of everything that happens in the country, nor vice versa from those countries to us.
Next question.
Who cares? I mean, it's a detail. It's a detail. I spoke to him. I'll speak to him again when it matters. Who cares? Who cares?
To put this in context, remember, the threats on tariffs was such an existential threat to Canada that Mark Carney called an early election.
I've just requested that the Governor General dissolve Parliament and call an election for April 28th.
He made a pitch. It wasn't just a promise to the Canadian people. It was the central promise of his entire campaign, that he was the man with a plan. He's the guy you hire in a crisis. He had some kind of secret knowledge that he would know how to handle Donald Trump and deliver a win.
I think in a situation like this, you need experience in terms of crisis management. You need negotiating skills, but you also need economic expertise.
He spends the entire election campaign demonizing his opponents, claiming that they would sell out on tariffs and they would somehow bow down and worship at the altar of Donald Trump.
And someone who worships Donald Trump will kneel down before him, not stand up to him. Negativity won't win a trade war.
And then he goes down to Washington, and just take a look at this body language. He's literally gushing over meeting his hero, Donald Trump. Mark Carney went from elbows up during the election to this in the Oval Office.
I want to be a great man too.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And as a result, Canadians are losing their jobs. Thousands of job losses in the auto sector, the softwood lumber sector, the steel industry. All this investment leaving Canada, going to the United States after all of this happening, after Mark Carney became Prime Minister. He was the guy that was supposed to solve all this. These are his words.
If there's not a crisis, you wouldn't be seeing me. I am most useful. I am honest. I'm most useful in crisis. I'm not that good in peace.
And after all that, months of this devastation hitting the Canadian economy, Mark Carney says, who cares?
Next question.
Who cares?
You know who cares? Those auto workers, those softwood lumber workers, those steel workers, the thousands of Canadians whose jobs depend on spin-off industries affected by those U.S. tariffs. But there was one group in Canada that didn't care: the media.
The opposition Conservatives are going after the Prime Minister over comments he made at the G20 summit during the weekend. So tell us about how all this played out in question period, because I heard Pierre Poilievre, he repeated that who cares response in English. When he was answering in French, he said it in English. He said it many, many times.
Really? The focal point of this story is how the Conservatives reacted, not the actual thing that Mark Carney said to all those Canadians who have lost their jobs. This is a subtle but very effective tactic by the media. It's called Conservatives Pounce. You see, when a Conservative makes a mistake or does something wrong, that's the focal point of the story. The media will hold it up to Canadians and say, this was something wrong. When a Liberal does something wrong, the media angle is Conservatives pounce, Conservatives slam. The entire focal point is on the Conservative reaction, not telling Canadians that what the Liberals did was objectively wrong. You might think that doesn't matter, but it is a subtle but effective way that the media protects Liberals from scrutiny and anger by keeping the spotlight slightly off center onto something else, not really the bad thing that the Liberal did, but how the Conservatives are reacting. The viewers and the listeners and the reader's brain is slightly refocused, not on the intrinsically awful thing that a Liberal just did, but how the Conservatives are reacting. Think about it. Mark Carney made this the essential plank of his election campaign, and the media happily went along with it. And then a few months later, he says, who cares? And you might be hearing about this for the first time on this YouTube channel. That's because they did not give it the coverage that it deserved. You would think that this would be the lead story on every broadcast for days at a time, front page headlines across the country. But they didn't. And when they did cover it, they used the classic tactic that the Parliamentary Press Gallery always uses.
Next question. Who cares?
What Mark Carney's actually saying is he has no idea. He doesn't know how he's going to get a deal. He has no plan to deal with Donald Trump. In fact, he's so bothered by the questions on it that he says, who cares? Well, that's what you should say every time Liberals tell you that you have to vote Liberal to deal with something on the international stage, to deal with the tariffs, to deal with the U.S. administration. You should just throw back at them, who cares? Anytime you hear Mark Carney talking about trade with the US or tariffs on Canadian exports, you should just say, who cares, change the channel, and tune him out. Because that was his message to you. So you know what, Mark Carney? This part's especially for you. On behalf of the millions of Canadians you've let down and insulted, every time you open your mouth in Parliament, our message to you, who cares?
Gang, what's up? Aaron, Canadian Loonie. We're trying to bring the most entertaining pieces of committees. These are a couple of old pieces. Chrystia Freeland, though, she was brutal. She's going to be going head-to-head here with Larry Brock and Jos Raj Halan, two of our favorites to watch on here. But Chrystia Freeland is a special kind of witch. Let's just take a look and a listen. This woman is ridiculous.
Oh, yeah. With MP Howland for 6 minutes, please.
Thanks, Chair. Minister, have you seen our Common Sense Conservative leader's brilliant 15-minute documentary on the housing hell in Canada that's been viewed over 4 million times?
I am certainly familiar with the Conservative scheme on housing. I haven't watched the video itself.
Okay, so I would strongly encourage that you do watch it, because it's a common sense Conservative plan how to build more homes and not more bureaucracy. And while you're at it, maybe like, share, and subscribe so others can see a common sense Conservative plan on how to get housing fixed as well.
I'm happy to comment on the Conservative scheme today, in fact.
Your government's housing agency, CMHC, says that 3.5 million additional homes need to be built in Canada by 2030 to restore housing affordability. Your housing agency, the same one, the head of that agency says that, it said 2 days ago at the Senate Finance Committee, that your government has no plan to reach that number. In fact, in this committee, that same agency, your housing agency, says that that target is not attainable under current conditions because of high interest rates and because of higher costs that were caused by your government. In other words, your own housing agency has no faith in you or your government. If your own housing agency has no faith in you, why should Canadians?
Thank you for the question, Mr. Hallen. You asked me to comment on the Conservative scheme on housing.
I didn't ask you to comment on that. I made a comment.
In fact, invited me to. So let me comment.
I'd like to hear an answer.
First of all, I would point out...
Point of order.
Point of order.
Mr. Halan, as he does every time the minister comes,
asks a question or makes a statement, and then refuses to allow the minister to answer. And so, Mr. Chair, I would just ask we allow the minister to answer the questions out of respect for the minister and the other members of this committee, but also the folks at home who are watching who would like to hear the answers.
The question is about our department not having faith in you.
MP Holland, I am going to ask, like it did happen the last meeting, a lot of crosstalk, you jumping in when you ask a question.
The question was not about the documentary. The question was about
you
her
ask the
department
question
not having faith
out
in
of
her.
respect and out of respect to everybody that's here.
Minister, can you please
MP Holland,
answer
MP Holland.
why Canadians should have faith in you?
MP Holland.
Even though your housing
MP
agency
Holland.
doesn't. That's the question.
MP Holland.
I've asked my question.
MP Holland. You asked a question. Allow the witness to answer the question.
She's not
the
answering
witness
the
did,
question.
The witness did not even have a nanosecond answer your question.
Point of order, Mr. Chair.
Point of order.
Not only is that irrelevant and untrue, and they're not answering the question, you shut me down by adjourning the meeting improperly. So could you please let Conservatives speak? I know you don't want to hear it as a Liberal. I know you don't want to hear about the housing hell, and you should watch the video too. I might add.
MP Lawrence,
Chair, I'll ask my question again. Let's move on. I will ask my question again. It's my time, Chair. I will ask the question again.
Actually,
Minister,
let me
your
just
housing
say,
agency has no faith
I believe
in
that
your
MP
plan.
Hallen
Why
asked me a
should
question.
Canadians?
I certainly believe the point of this exercise is for him to ask me a question. He offered quite a long
Questions on the
preamble
table 3
with
times
lots
now.
of points embedded in it.
Why should
and I'd
Canadians
like to
have faith in
respond
you
to
when your
those.
own agency
if
doesn't?
MP Hallen would like to
That's the
hear a
question.
response.
Allow the witness, please, to answer the questions.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that Conservative senators have been reprimanded for bullying witnesses, and it would be terrible to have that kind of behavior.
Your Prime
here in the
Minister
House.
has been reprimanded for bullying strong women in his own caucus for standing up to his corruption.
So let
please spare
me
us
let
the-
me
the
now
lecture.
speak about housing, and let me first point out that there is an internal contradiction in what the Conservative members of this committee have done when it comes to voting and their purported
irrelevant to
scheme
my
on
question.
housing. Actually,
Point
I
of
believe
order,
that your
Mr. Chair.
votes are very
Point of
relevant.
order.
There has to be.
Question
You
was
have
clear.
to stop interrupting.
Yeah.
Stop interrupting.
So I'll move on.
point
I'll
of
move
order.
on.
No, I
I'll
haven't
watch you move-
finished
I'll
answering.
move on. It's my time, and I only have
No,
limited
I'm afraid
time.
actually it's time for
so,
questions and answers,
Minister,
MP Hallen, so I would like
Minister,
to answer
this is
because
the
I have
reason
things
why,
to say
and
about
this is
housing
exactly
because
the
we have a
reason
plan.
why your non-answer proves why Canadians and your own housing agency has no faith in your government to meet the target.
Point of order.
What this proves is that the Conservatives do
It's
not
not a
want to
point
actually
of
listen
order.
to the
Point of
answers.
order. Not
the
a
point of order is, excuse me.
Point of order.
Excuse me. I have listened to you interrupt the minister and not allow her to
Debate.
speak.
That's
I
not a
have the
point of
right
order, Mr.
to make
Chair.
a
That's
point
not
of
a
order.
point
Now
of
I'm being
order.
interrupted and heckled during my point of order. Please, Chair. Please, I'm asking you. Minister Freeland has the right to respond to
This
the
is not
questions
a
that
point
are
of order,
put
Mr.
to,
Chair.
and this is not. This is
Do
a
your
point
job.
of. Now I'm being heckled and interrupted.
It's not a
during
point
my
of order. This is a breach of process.
This is.
Thank you.
it-
Yeah. Okay.
It's not a point of
witnesses
order.
have.
Here's okay.
I will move on.
MP
I can't,
Lawrence and MP
Chair.
Holland.
This has
and-
descended
and-
so
let's-
badly now that I'm being
Yes.
interrupted during my point of order.
Yes. Okay. Members, first off, stop the crosstalk. Okay. Stop the crosstalk.
I'll
And the
move on.
other thing is, MP Holland, MP Lawrence, any MP is we have interpreters here. You know, there's a lot of screaming going on. If members screaming into the mics, I think in my opening remarks I explained the danger, the health and safety to our interpreters. So I would ask, that is with crosstalk, that is with screaming, that is with not having respect and decorum here in this room. I think that is what we want.
Point of order.
Yeah, we are looking
Point
for
of order.
respect and decorum. Point of
Please
order.
don't
MP Lawrence.
crosstalk. And I did not. I raised my voice at a reasonable tone, and you did not recognize it last meeting. So that's why I have to raise my voice, because I'm hoping you'll hear me, Chair.
I can hear you, MP Lawrence.
Chair,
I can
Chair, with respect, I'd like to move on to my next question. So we can agree that Canadians and your own housing agency don't have faith in your government, which they've already outlined, and that's why after your government spent $89 billion on photo op funds for housing promises that have not been actualized, rents, mortgages, the amount of down payment needed on a house has all doubled in just 8 years. This was never there before your government, and it certainly won't be there afterwards. Canadians are living in a housing hell and a cost of living crisis. 2 million Canadians are going into a food bank in a single month just in 8 years. There's a 100% increase in food bank usage. A third of those kids are kids that are starving because of high taxes like the carbon tax and other factors that have been caused by your government. The number one reason for food bank usage is because of the housing unaffordability that your government has created. 10 cities across this country, there are nurses living in their cars, there are students living under bridges. That's 8 years after your government. Why should anyone believe that anything that your government has done is actually helping addressing the affordability crisis?
Thank you for the question. Let me just start by saying Canadians know the Conservatives cannot be trusted when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable people in Canada. Since we formed government, 2.3 million Canadians have been lifted out of poverty, and our government has particularly. I'm sorry, Mr. Hallen. I'm speaking about poverty in Canada, which you purport to care about and which you purport to have addressed in your question. And I'd like to finish my answer, please.
It was about food banks.
The Canada Child Benefit has had a huge impact on Canadian families and is having an impact today, lifting millions and millions out of poverty, and the statistics show that. Our early learning and child care program
Minister,
is
the
helping
question
Canadians.
was clear. I'll have to move on because I have a limited amount of time.
No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. You haven't given me a chance to answer, and that
with all
is
of
not
that,
only rude,
2 million
it's
Canadians are
inappropriate
still going
at
into
committee.
food bank. I'll just ask my last question because my time is limited. Your government promised by Thanksgiving that the price of food would go down. A scathing report came out this morning on the food index saying that food costs are going up, driven up also by your carbon tax because you're taxing farmers and those that are shipping the food and storing the food. Those people going into a food bank are increasing because of food costs and housing costs caused by your government. 83% actually that are going to food banks are working families. That's a phenomenon that we've never seen in this country before. So you promised on Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving went by, food prices didn't come down. We thought maybe you meant the U.S. Thanksgiving. That went by as well. Nothing happened. It's almost Christmas time, and there's literally kids in this country asking Santa not for gifts, but just for food that they could put on their table. On what date will food prices actually come down so Canadians can afford to eat? And when will you axe the tax so people can put food on their table and heat their homes?
So let me just be clear. I've been repeatedly interrupted, and what we see is that Conservatives are interested in posturing. They're not interested in asking actual questions. But let me be clear. Canadians know that Conservatives only believe in cuts, particularly for the most vulnerable among us. And that is why our government is so committed to supporting the most vulnerable, to supporting children. 2.3 million Canadians lifted out of poverty. The Canada Child Benefit, money directly for the most vulnerable children in our country. And when it comes to housing, the purported subject of this meeting, let me just be clear that the Conservative purported scheme actually would go backwards on housing. It would actually put the GST back on the construction of rental housing that we need. This is not a scheme. This is putting Canada into reverse, when actually what we need to do is build more homes faster.
Thank you, Minister. The time is up now, and so just on the timing, as members know, each party has 6 minutes. If a question is asked when there's like 5.5 minute mark or 5:40, and the witness then is answering, the time will go over the 6 minutes. And that is as we have the practice that we have kept here on this committee, and that's what we will continue to keep doing unless the members decide otherwise. And now we are moving.
Oh, yeah. Freeland, you'll agree with me that the state-owned, taxpayer-funded Canadian Broadcasting Corporation reported on February the 10th, 2022, that the GoFundMe donations to the convoy protest came from donors located outside of Canada. You'd agree with that?
I don't have the report in front of me, and I haven't memorized all CBC reports, but I'm prepared to believe you.
In fact, they stated that the donations came from America, United Kingdom, France, Germany, Australia, New Zealand, and the Netherlands. You'd also accept that as fact?
I don't see the article before me, but you say that's what it says.
They even claimed that the convoy might be Russian-funded. Do you recall that?
Again, you're reading from the article.
Yes. On March 21st, 2002, the CBC, without any explanation, without apology, without any clarity, retracted their story regarding the funding of the protest. You were aware of that?
Again, I'm not speaking for the CBC. I'm speaking for
I'm not
the
asking
Ministry
you to
of
speak
Finance.
for the CBC. I'm asking, were you informed that the CBC retracted the story, the false story, about foreign funding donations to the convoy?
Again, Mr. Brock, I don't believe that the CBC is being interrogated here. I believe it's the government of
Just
Canada.
answer the question, Minister Freeland. Were you aware, yes or no? It's a simple question.
I don't have the article before me, and I'm not here to answer questions about the CBC and
The
its
Deputy
reporting.
Prime Minister, the most senior cabinet minister, is not prepared to accept whether or not the CBC retracted a false story?
I don't speak for the CBC, sir.
You, as the most senior cabinet minister and the deputy prime minister, relied upon that initial story from the CBC and shared your concerns with Canadians regarding terrorism funding and money laundering. Your words, correct?
Let me be very clear. My principal concern when it comes to the illegal occupation and the illegal blockades is the economic harm that
Let
was
me
done
be
to
very
Canada.
clear, Minister Freeland. Your words several times in the House referred to terrorism funding and money laundering. Are you saying you didn't use those words?
I am speaking here today, and I am talking about the central motivation of our very serious
And
actions.
I'm here to ask you questions, and I expect, unlike question period, I expect a response. So my response is, do you recall using the words terrorism funding and money laundering in the House and reporting outside the House? Yes or no, Minister Freeland?
I believe if we were in a court of law where I think you once worked, that might be called badgering the witness, Mr. Brock.
Chair?
Yeah.
Can we allow the question to be answered?
Thank you. As I said, my core concern as Minister of Finance and my central justification for these very serious measures that we put in place, as was clear in my opening statement.
You're not
as I
answering
have
the
said
question. I'm
throughout,
going to move on.
Is the economic
You're not answering the
impact.
question, and I will move on.
Madam Chair, on a point of order, it's entirely possible that Mr. Brock doesn't like the answers he's hearing, but the witness is entitled to provide an answer. If she could just be provided the opportunity to provide an
Madam
answer.
Chair, the witness may not like the questions, but she's not entitled to establish her own facts in responding to an answer that is non-responsive and not relevant to the question.
I'd actually just, we'll move back 20 seconds, allow you to ask your last question.
Do you agree with me that the Deputy Director of FinTrack, Mr. McKillop, confirmed at committee that the convoy funding did not come from terrorism funding or money laundering, and the typical person who donated hundreds and thousands of dollars to the convoy came from their own resources and posed no security threat? Do you accept that?
What I accept, Mr. Brock, is that the core threat was to the Canadian economy, to our reputation as a trading partner and investment destination.
Thank you
I
for
made
the
that clear in
non-response,
my
Minister.
opening remarks, and that is my view.
Thank you for the non-response, Minister. Very helpful.
We'll move to Mr. Nakvi.
We'll wrap it up right there, gang. Aaron, Canadian Loonie, like, share, subscribe. We cover Canadian federal politics here. We show old pieces like this to remember how things were and where they're going. Chrystia Freeland is very hard to forget. Never really want to see her back in the House of Commons unless she's going to start answering questions. Liberal voters, I know that it's hard to figure this out. Watch this channel. You'll figure it out pretty quickly. These liberals are lying right to your face all the time, spending all your money, throwing it away on bogus when we have so many crises here in Canada. Mark Carney is a con man. Till the next video, thank you very much for watching this one. Like, share, subscribe. Get your Canadian federal politics right here That's it. Aaron, Canadian Loonie. Like, share, subscribe. We'll catch you